commission to order. Today is August the 13th, 2020.
Rick Hasty,
Here.
Beth Thomas, Tom Williams.
I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. I've read the minutes. They look fine to me.
Me too.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are approved. You want to move that? Okay. All right, what we've got on here for now is budget amendments, and Jimmy, that's your deal.
Yay. Okay, so we've got several. The first one here is additional changes in the revenue for LAST for the sheriff. That's gonna end up in buying some cars with that money.
Okay, he's moving it from,
Well, it's meant where they sold older cars.
Okay.
And then they're putting it in here to mainly vehicle purchase. They've got a smidge overage on their uniform, so he's putting some additional money there out of
Okay.
the cars from the sold.
I see.
Okay.
Can you
Don?
sit down?
Go ahead.
Okay, I didn't take a motion on this.
Move to approve.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries, and we've all got a sign.
Next again is LAST. This is for the jail section. It's money from the inmate commissary revenue to move into expenditures so they can purchase some of the transport.
That's their transport vehicle. Transport.
So, over to approve.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Next one is a reclassification for P&Z. She's moving money from her equipment to her vehicle maintenance.
Okay.
$500.
Move to approve.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, next is, juvenile, is going to move some money from court services to legal, cover some legal expenses they've incurred, $2,000.
Okay. Somebody want to make a motion on this one?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
We got
Switch
one.
going on right now.
I just forgot the date though, so I'm gonna take that one. Just a second.
Okay.
Okay, this is another one, moving some FEMA money for repairs, $620,000. The road bridge.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
what I had to talk to you guys about
Yep.
We did.
previously.
Okay.
I'll move to approve it.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
And then the last one is, Bev and Don had talked to me about legal expenses that we need to, take out of unexpected government. I don't know the amount. Due to the purchases.
Last one. 6,000. Probably. We don't have anything coming that I'm aware of.
Sorry, so
Because
our
I'm
road,
not
so our road.
aware of anything we have pending.
Okay.
I would be one to
Those in favor?
Aye. At any time, anything can happen. I would want to know.
This is the move that CA owns. Oh, that's at 628 where it's all going.
We'll just run over
Curl
this.
along with the previous.
Yeah.
Everybody's putting all that money in rock, or culverts and asphalts. Yeah.
Just like this section. This one goes with the one on Rosewood. This one, this goes with this. This one. Okay. Okay.
Okay. Oh,
Now
you
we're
got
on
more?
policies, yeah. So, the next step we have here, Charlie has reviewed. This is the procurement policy. Bev reviewed it,
I've reviewed it all.
and, I'll try to use the right word here. I appropriated from another county, bigger than us, it's
This is
First
what
Class
we've been
County.
talking.
Yep.
We have to get that in place in order for our FEMA funds to keep coming.
Okay.
Because we don't evidently have one. So on page 5, section 18, there's a dollar amount there that you guys need to either approve or say we want to change. Section 18 is one. That number's not that large.
I'm fine with that one.
Yeah.
I
The
think
next-
thousands, okay.
Yeah, that's right. Page 8, section 4 is the next one. That number is 250,000. I think it probably needs to be lower than that.
Much lower.
I did have a question on that also.
Okay.
And Jimmy and Bev and I talked about it, that 250,000 was a little high. Not a little high, a lot high.
It's a lot high.
Yeah, a lot high. The bids are generally opened in the purchasing department except for bids greater than 250,000 and road project bids. Bid should be,
Anything over 6 is what state statute.
Yes.
So I think we should do whatever statute requires. But you do whatever you want.
And we have all
county
these.
commission should be the one supervising
Exactly.
anything above 6.
I agree.
Well, I'm just not comfortable doing, I don't want that to be any amount, that's not what the statute
The
says.
statute's is 6, so
And we do all bid.
if you have no problem, we will make that number 6,000.
Yeah. Okay, is there anywhere on here to sign, or is this just a policy?
This is the policy that you're going to adopt.
Okay, I wanna make
With
a note of
revisions.
this.
I mean,
We
we're gonna.
will adopt it with.
With that change.
With pursuant to these changes.
That way there's simply no way to be able to be crushed.
Absolutely.
So on page 10, when you're talking the sole source procurement, it's set at 6,002. I think that's where it needs to be.
I do too,
I
because
agree.
that's statute
Yeah.
anyway.
Then on page 11, we have another one, cost and price to capital projects. I think that needs to be $6,000.
I do too.
It is section 1,
Yeah.
so main section 3202, subsection 1. Yeah, needs to be $6,000.
As long as that's state statute and.
Okay, next page, 1112, section 3204. Charlie?
Yes, this states that the purchasing department generally requests bonds and securities for contracts greater than 50,000. However, the purchasing clerk or administrative authority has a discretion to request bonds or other security contracts less than 50,000. Do you typically request a bond on anything less than 50?
No.
That's,
So it's not happening, well, I'll be.
Okay.
so then it's
If
fine.
not, I just probably leave it at 50 then.
I agree. I think that's reasonable.
Okay. Our next one is on page 16. Section 4104, subsection 1.
Yep.
And it's on commodities being bought or the manufacturers. There is a provision if it needs to be changed, if you can buy it, it's not. You have a problem with that on there? Yeah, we'll reduce it a little bit. We'll put a little towards that.
Look, it's just my opinion, anything that Janet deals with, it's in excess of $6,000. There needs to be a agenda item on that, so that it gives me minutes.
So you want to change that to 6?
Yeah, I do.
All right, so page 19, section 3.4, subsection 3.4.1. Capital improvement projects. I don't know that you don't want that number lower.
Keep in mind, this is professional services, this has to do with a
Right.
federal law in which the normal bidding process doesn't
Right.
apply.
That's why we're asking you if that's what you.
But we still go out for, even if we don't go out for a dollar amount, we go out for a request for qualifications.
Yeah.
So we'll go out for like RFQs. And I still think that's the appropriate way to do it. I still think you go out for RFQs.
But do you want it that high dollar?
No.
No,
I
I think
think
it
it
should be lower.
Absolutely.
I'd be comfortable on that at 10,000.
I'd say 10.
Yeah, yeah.
I agree.
So on page 20, it's referring back to that same amount again. So I'm assuming we're going to do that also,
Yeah.
because it's all in the same
Yeah.
section.
Because like they do with this $10,000, if you're just having someone do a survey or something like that, $10,000 is a lot of money.
Right.
So their day-to-day stuff.
I agree. That's why we're discussing it. Okay, last question is on page 27. So we have the fixed assets, and it talks about anything over $1,000 needs to be inventoried. That comes from the state statute. But what I see in most first-class counties is they have an exception for anything that's an IT equipment, like a computer tower, anything that holds data. Because you could have something that's less than $1,000. Sometimes you buy a tower that's not very long.
Yeah.
So I think there should be an exception to that rule that says
I agree.
IT equipment's going down, it needs to be.
I agree. I think we would leave the $1,000 with the exception of IT equipment. If we just add that phrase.
Well, I think I would add IT equipment's going down because you might have a
Right.
printer. You really want to inventory a $200 printer. But we may.
But every hard drive.
But every hard drive.
Everything that's got a hard drive.
That's why I'm
needs to be
saying
in
anything with
inventory.
data.
Yeah.
Anything that's with data. We'll make that change. And so with your permission, you'll accept it once we make those changes. That's good.
I've written down those changes, did you as well?
Yep. On here,
Okay.
tab, happy for those we keep doing,
Yeah.
so we should be good.
Okay.
Okay, do we have any other policy things that we need to bring up?
Not under this one. Do I need to bring up another policy?
That was the other policy.
I have a comment about our insurance policy. The insurance policy we carry, one of our complaints that we've gotten from the employees over several years has been that we do not include Kansas City, doctors in Kansas City with our policy. Okay. In a discussion with Jeremy has said that we can add Kansas City physicians, at least named ones like we do every place else, for $1 employee per month, $1 per employee
Oh,
per
we
month.
need-
And we can add Kansas City.
Let's do that.
I don't know, we could wait until the 1st of January to do a budget on it, or to add it to the new budget, but I'll be honest with you, I think that would be worth doing like the 1st of September. So we'd have the last quarter to make that available to employees.
It'll take him a little bit to get it up and running, to get cars out.
But,
I think we should, that would be good for employees as well.
it'd be very good for them, because that's one of the things they've said for a long time, is we didn't have Kansas City doctors on.
Right.
Let's do that in one.
Yeah.
Okay. I would make a motion with our insurance with Mutual Medical. And this is in conversation with Jeremy, to add Kansas City physicians to our policy for $1 per employee per month, beginning September 1.
I mean, that's an insignificant budget item
It is.
that will
Benefit the employees.
significantly benefit employees.
Exactly.
Okay, you make a motion,
Second.
those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay.
We need to vote on this one, or?
The adopt policy.
You need to adopt that,
Yeah.
and then we need to talk about the other business.
Okay.
Okay, I entertain a motion on the Camden County Purchasing Policy Manual.
With changes.
With the changes as provided, or as discussed.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we've adopted that policy based on the changes that we made and the dollar amounts that we made. I assume you will make those adjustments for us.
We'll get them, and we'll give you an updated copy.
Okay,
Tomorrow,
okay.
Monday, we'll get that.
All right,
He had something else.
oh, Jimmy, do you have something else?
Yeah, so, another business, upcoming budget, and as usual, we always get to the time of the year that it's time to give it out to all elected officials. So I have just a few questions. A, are we doing a flat budget, or raising budget, or increasing budget? Because they're all gonna want to know that question. They can plan without knowing
Well, look,
that
we're not,
answer.
yeah, we're not, I'm just thankful we're not like other areas that their budgets have crashed. And
I
the
think we
state,
should leave it flat,
that's my opinion too.
unless you think we need to increase it. I don't see a raise in budget at all.
We don't know what's gonna happen between now and
Right.
spring.
I agree, I think there's too much uncertainty.
No, I
I don't
agree
have a
100%.
clue what's gonna happen next year, with revenues, with COVID, with any of it.
I agree 100%.
So I agree, I think we ought to just leave a flat budget.
And honestly, we start the budget with all of them, they have to have it in by mid-September the 10th. And then when I start working on it, and you guys get it in November, and by November, we should know where September falls.
Right.
And then we'll have an indication of maybe where we think the fourth quarter of this year will be. And then that will let us know. So it could all change by the time December rolls around, because October is when we'll be in there, and we'll know what October looks like.
So we did take it flat.
So unless you guys have a different types of different order, that it's flat or decreasing.
I would have to argue with you if you want to say that.
Well, all I know is I attended a CCAN meeting this morning at Camden on the way for people, in a lot of other counties. There were some very depressed people.
I talk with, there's a lot of counties that are in a very bad situation, unfortunately, you're not. So, with that, the next question is, what are we doing about wages specifically in regards to minimum wages? This is the second year it's going up. How are we going to adjust? It will go up in a total of $3.40 by 2023. We will have to do some adjusting to do something about it across the board.
And that's the trouble, once you start, you can't only bring up the bottom ones because then everybody else is bringing up the ones that in different positions, different time frames.
So the correction there, and then there was discussion during election time, the sheriff had had a conversation about salary plans. Do you guys have a copy of that? 'Cause I don't know.
One of the things that I wanted to bring up with regard to all this stuff that we're talking about.
That's my
right
two
now.
questions, so I'm just listening.
There has been a lot of statewide controversy over this, and the state of North Missouri has handled it very poorly. I've been looking into the deal with, medical marijuana manufacturing facilities in Camden County. And there's some question as to whether or not we could be able to do that as a commission by a ordinance. But it's unclear whether we have legal authority to do so. I would like to, as a matter of record, make a request to a firm like Hush Blackwell, who we have under contract, who is able to make that type of a thing, to look into and give us a written opinion with regard to that. Because some of the numbers I'm looking at, if we would adopt a local policy of being able to issue licenses within the county to do that, that this could potentially generate over $5 million a year in county revenue. That would be significant enough to make changes with regard to the, quite frankly, financial crisis we're in.
I thought licensing was all at the state level.
There's actually some questions to whether or not, based on what that we may be able to.
I know there are some lawsuits with the ones they issue, the ones they supposedly
Yeah.
did.
So, I don't know, but I would really like for some really reputable firm to tell us, either tell us, yes, you can do it, or no, you can't.
Apparently, there's some opinion that there's some room to maneuver in there. We just discussed it the other day, so I don't know much about it yet. Because unlike you, I thought it was all controlled with the state.
I do too, 'cause I thought it so far anyway, because they are the ones that did all the original licensing, but I do know there have been a number of lawsuits on it.
It's probably worth looking into.
Look, something like this that has the potential to make this much difference for our county, I think it's worth it to, I mean, fine. Just, if they tell us no, that's fine, but we need to look into it. Lake of the Ozarks, many people here submitted for a license to manufacture medical marijuana, and they had their proposals, and Lake of the Ozarks just kind of got sidelined on this. So, at any rate, I would like to have someone look into it like that's back on.
There's some, I've got a couple of people that mentioned.
We've already got them under contract, so I don't think there's need for a motion or anything like that. I'd just like to have them look at it, and I just want to make it a matter of record that we're gonna have somebody to look at it, give some opinion, and let the chips fall where they may. Everybody knows that as time goes on, our economy is not expanding like it was in the past. Our economy expanded because population was increasing in the past. We were living off of a ever-increasing yearly budget from county that allowed us to be able to take care of things. But since we kind of stagnated on population growth, I mean, you can't have, Sheriff's Department needs money, Road and Bridge needs money. On our Road and Bridge budget, we're like third from the bottom in the state. we've got 1,000 miles of road, and we've got $3,600 a mile to spend on it. Something will have to change. But we've also got, the citizens of our county with an average household income of around $47,000 per household, with an $1,100 a month house payment or living expenses. There's simply no way you can ask those people for more money. So it's kind of a rock and a hard place. We're talking about budget and things like that. Somewhere down the road, we've got to do something. It's not long before something has to happen. So anyway, I'd just like to look into that and see if it's even potentially an option for us. All right. Anyone else have anything with regard to budget for this next year, discussion at all? Yes.
I was looking at the 2020 budget, and I brought some examples, and the activity that's reported for 2017, 18, and 19 don't match the previous budgets that are posted and for 2019, 18, and 17. Like they're the same format, but the numbers don't. I have examples here for you guys if you want to look at them.
We would have to, yeah, we would have to review those. We have in 2019/20, we did just do a huge conversion on our software, but those years have been closed out, so the actuals that were spent should be the same. So we would appreciate seeing those numbers to look at.
I'll show you, because it looks like every elected official from 2017 to 2020 got a 10% to 15% raise. That's how it looks in the 2020 budget. But I would assume that the previous budgets were more accurate, and they don't show those types of raises. So like, if you're somebody that's looking for the first time, you're like, holy cow.
Well, what actually,
Like for you guys, it says 136,000 for 2017 for 3 people. That's $50,000 off.
So state statute governs salaries, and it's all based on assessed value.
Yeah, but I'm saying your reports don't.
Okay.
We're glad to look at it.
Yeah, we will.
So it's hard to look at a budget. Like, yeah, okay. And then one more thing is that the treasurer's office doesn't have anything online, like financial statements. It goes back to 2016. So anything last 3 years would be helpful too.
well, that's also in the area where we were in the
That's another.
conversion of a massive conversion of software. The stuff we were running prior to there was 1980s era software, and it's been a really difficult process to bring that information in and bring it into the current system. Took a lot of work to do, and we're
Does
just
the auditor's office use the numbers from the treasurer's office? Like, do they have to provide you numbers for you to make your reports?
The numbers that you're looking at, Gail, the numbers that you're looking at are produced out of the software. So your certified financial statements come from the treasurer's office. And the clerk's office, the county clerk's office publishes those, but that data, that information on each ending balance of the funds come from the treasurer's office. What we're providing are actual dollars that were spent per line item, and that comes out of the software.
And then the treasurer would have capital asset information, or is that the auditor?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
Is it public comment section time?
I got a question.
Oh, okay.
Regarding budget, on per diem rates, did we ever change? I know there was a proposed increase last year, maybe. I was going towards the end of the year. Did we ever change the per diem rates? 25 in-state, 30 out-of-state. Did we go up to the minimum?
Seems we did.
No, that one we did not ever change, it was tabled.
Okay, I remember talking about it.
It was the only one that I know of that we tabled. It was still up for discussion, and it was tabled at that time.
Okay, I remember the discussion.
Yeah.
I thought we didn't
time for public comment?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thanks for taking my call, I appreciate it. So at one of the debates, Bev, you said something about sharing office equipment, like copy machines, staplers, and things like that, and I just want to commend you, that was a brilliant idea, it really was. I think it's a way that the county can save money, and I think there's other things that you can do to save money, such as reusing staples. You know, I have a friend who has a patent on machines, and I can probably get you a good deal on that machine for reusing staples. Also, when I came here today, I checked the bathrooms, and I noticed that each bathroom had its own soap. I think you would save money if you had a communal washing area. It would save on janitorial costs because your janitors would not have to go between bathrooms and fill those things. And then also it would save on water because it perhaps would discourage some people from washing their hands each time they use the bathroom. Also, I think a comprehensive bathroom policy such as if it's yellow, let it mellow, if it's brown, flush it down, would be very, very
Do you have
advantageous.
something serious to talk about?
Oh, yes,
I'm
yes, I'm
I'd
very
like to go
serious.
back.
This is a budget meeting, I'm very serious, okay? Thirdly, if you want to guarantee that there is revenue in the county, I think that you should ensure that all elected officials are paying their taxes both yearly and on time. You all are aware that taxes are due in December, correct, Bev? You know that? Greg, you know your taxes are due in December. Don, do you know your taxes are due in December? Are they due in December? Everybody aware of that? Your taxes are due in December, correct? So if you need money for road and bridge, I think it would be very advantageous if you make sure that everyone pays their taxes both on time and yearly. Thank you.
Well, I think it's very important that every individual in our country and every individual in county government be afforded all of the requirements and privileges of federal and state law with regard to taxes, as long as you are within the parameters of the law with regard to those taxes, well, then I think we're doing fine.
I think those parameters are very flexible, of course, but I think that, you know, if you're going to talk about needing money, one of the best things you can do is ensure that your taxes are paid, because that is where you're paid. And like I said, all of you are aware that taxes are due in December, correct? They are due in December.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
And your name, sir?
What?
What is your name?
Richard
Richard?
Fitzwell. Fitzwell?
Richard Fitzgerald.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yes, sir?
I just had a question. When it came to the manufacturing of marijuana license, or handing those licenses out, would there be, I don't know about, and would there be any, I guess, reverse on prosecuting people for having that, or?
Honestly, I
mean,
don't
like-
know. I don't know. The reason I wanted to get Hush Blackwell to give us an opinion is just so we would know if this is even an option. This has been such a mess, the way they've done this at the state level. And I just feel like Camden County got the short shift on it. So I'd like for us to see where we're at and actually know what the options are. You're asking questions that, quite frankly, that's why I want someone to give me those options.
I just didn't know if there was, you know, you'd be creating a problem, I guess, if it's still illegal to possess, and then you'd be issuing licenses for people
Well, I
to
mean, the state
possess
of Missouri's
it.
doing the same thing. They passed a law that's in violation of federal law.
For sure, most definitely.
I mean, and so, state of Missouri is issuing licenses right now on what appears to me to be a very unfair basis, giving advantages to some and disadvantages to others, and everything that they're doing, yeah, it's in violation of federal law.
Totally agree, totally agree. I just didn't know where that line is.
And, you
And
know,
if we're-
and someone like Hush Blackwell, they may not even want to touch this. I'm just, you know, we're in some really gray area here, but it seems to me like Camden County's kind of getting the short shaft.
Camden County has the authority to decriminalize within their county. I lived in Summit County,
That's what I'm-
18 years ago,
sorry.
and it was decriminalized in that county over the rest of the state. Just
That's-
the answer is
that's what I'm saying, if you can decriminalize it, maybe that might be a step before you would issue licenses to have it, like.
The conversation I had with another county, and I can't remember, I think maybe it was Taney County, where they talked about decriminalizing. Well, there's no criminal penalty, but there is a $10 fine.
Right.
So they just, you know, it's not significant.
You could raise revenue by ticketing people with up to a certain amount.
It just seems like there's an expense, and with the police department even having to deal with it.
Yeah.
If we're handing out in one corner and then arresting people in another corner, it seems strange for a
Well,
county.
we got sheriff's folks here right now. I mean,
Yeah, we're giving them a lot of work to do, and then we're trying to make it legal in one sense, like.
my impression from talking to folks at the sheriff's department, that unless someone's carrying around a gigantic bag, it's not a big deal.
That's what the people, I guess a ticket up to a certain amount.
Yeah.
That's pretty much how it is now.
Well, like you can have up to like a certain amount, and it's just
Well, look.
Misdemeanor, misdemeanor.
but not even a misdemeanor.
Here's the bottom line, the overall bottom line about this. The fact is, the citizens of our county, if they're making $47,000 a year and they're paying $1,100 a month in household expenses, you can look it up in the census. That's the data. How can you ask those folks for more money? And yet, you guys need more money, Road and Bridge needs, I mean, we're third from the bottom with regard to dollars per mile for roads in the state of Missouri. We've got almost 1,000 miles of road.
What's the percentage of gravel compared to pavement?
About 50, we got 420 some miles of asphalt.
So you have a majority of gravel.
Majority
That would
gravel.
probably explain some of the discrepancies, like between a first-class county, for instance, someone mentioned that, you know, we're at 3,000 something and they're at 11,000. Most first-class counties have all paved roads, correct? No? I mean, it's a general thing. I mean, most of the first-class counties I've seen have paved roads. No?
Do you guys have a year-to-date actual on 2020 or any information?
For what?
Like where we sit in the first two quarters, or what is it? Is this a fiscal year on June, or is this January one?
January.
So
And
we
we
have
we print those out monthly.
We can generate the data at any time.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. We've got a discussion, general cares grant discussion with commission, Judge Hamner and Heather,
And it's not until 2
not
o'clock.
until 2 o'clock, so if anyone else got anything, then otherwise we'll just kind of set tight till 2. You know what? I've got some questions, since I got sheriff's guys here. I wouldn't mind having some of you guys' thoughts on the medical marijuana thing. I mean, it would be kind of a non-issue for you as a prosecutor.
I prosecute state statutes.
Okay.
We enforce state statutes.
All right, so it's really not there.
Living the dream.
You're talking about medical is legal. Somebody has a medical card, that's that. I can get a medical card today.
Yeah, have to wait till 2 o'clock.
Folks, we've got 20 minutes. We're just gonna adjourn for 20 minutes until 2. That way. Well, I mean, the last thing we got up is. Yeah, we're just gonna recess to 2. We're leaving the meeting open,
We could go back up there.
I can't do it. This is just general discussion stuff anyway. So, I'm going to, end the recess, and since you guys wanted to talk about this stuff, it's your deal.
You have the floor.
I wanted to bring to you a proposal for some of the CARES funding that's been allocated to the county. I asked Judge Camden and Maylee to come with me because this affects not only the prosecutor's office, the entire courthouse, but also the jail as well. In light of the pandemic, you know, the way that we function has fundamentally changed. Camden County has been at phase 0, and again, the courthouse is governed by rules of the Supreme Court. It's not a local decision. There are guidelines that are set forth, and they're interpreted by the presiding judge. But phase 0 means that there are no in-contact proceedings with very few exceptions, such as speedy trial rights of those in custody. Even with that, a majority of those hearings, at least on the criminal side, are conducted at this point through Zoom and WebEx. I think that we've been luckier than most. And from my experience in going outside of our county into different circuits, those that are able to use distancing technology, such as Zoom and WebEx, have been able to move their dockets and keep things on a much more updated playing field. You have places like Boone County, Jefferson County, and some of the more urban counties where the technology's been in place for quite a while. And so their transition has been somewhat seamless, and they've been able to do that. Other more rural counties that we're at, what we're looking at right now is, one, things are just being massively reset, long lines outside of the courthouse, pagers, people being forced to sit in cars, lack of communication, and, you know, there's always going to be some sort of backup, but a backup that's really going to come as a big bill once we get past this all. With the CARES Act, we have the ability to continue and build on the technology that we already have as a courthouse, and it will put us on the same playing field as other first-class counties, such as Boone County, that already had this full suite. And so what we did is we contacted Mission Electronics. They are a government contractor, so we wouldn't have to open it up to open bidding for the statute. They have gone through both the courthouse and the jail, and they've come up with bids to put in place audio-video conferencing that would allow not only seamless communication between the jail and the courtrooms and the prison system. This is the Polycom-based system, which is what the Department of Correction uses, so it would cut down our need to transport prisoners back and forth, which is one of the main things we're worried about right now with spread of infection from the pandemic. It would also enable attorneys, because it interacts with Zoom and WebEx and the other digital conferencing upgrades. And so it would allow attorneys from across the state to be able to connect, speak with their clients throughout the jail, and connect and attend court virtually. There's, this program has been funded through the CARES Act in other counties, and this particular provider is willing also to give us a grant writer to use to write the grant for the CARES Act, and this has been used successfully in other counties. So.
Well, I think Ms. Miller covered most of it, but I'll just kind of give you the perspective. Certainly as a circuit judge, I bounce around up to 5 counties, including Camden, Lee, Miller, Morgan, Montauk. So you get to see the various setups that the various counties have, and certainly having to transition from what has always traditionally been an in-person court proceedings and all proceedings being in court in person, to trying to do something more digitally, trying to do something more that allows people to participate via technology or some type, has been a challenge. It's been more of a challenge in some of the other circuits. Montauk County didn't even have a fax machine until a couple of years ago. So it's been a challenge, certainly. And I want to commend Ms. Miller's office and all the judges and prosecutors and defense counsel who've been working so hard. You know, we've made it work to this point. We've hobbled along using iPads and store-bought Wi-Fi and stuff like that. to try to make these things work as well as we can. But the process is starting to show the cracks. You know, we don't have the ability to video conference with all the jails in the circuit. We don't have the ability to conduct hearings with certain people. You know, we don't have the ability to get into the prison systems without a dedicated polycom system. So all of those things are kind of tied into it. And make no mistake about it, you know, certainly part of the CARES Act funding is a requirement that these upgrades are necessitated by COVID and necessitated by the issue that we have. And make no mistake about it, the circumstances that we are in right now necessitates these changes. We're trying to limit the amount of contact that people have. Court systems are a little different than restaurants and bars and schools and things like that, because we're requiring people to come. It is not voluntary. It is not optional. We require people to come to court whether they want to or not. And because of that, I know we as judges feel an obligation to make sure that we're taking every step that we can to reduce the possibility of exposure for people and to try to keep everybody safe and healthy. Being able to participate and use virtual courtrooms and video court is a key component of that. So absolutely it's COVID related. But as Ms. Miller noted, long term, this is also of great benefit to Camden County in that, you know, to the extent that we can video conference into other jails, into prisons, and other things like that, we reduce the potential need to transport prisoners, not only just from the Department of Corrections, but from other counties. We hopefully reduce some of the burden on jailers who no longer will need to transport prisoners from the jail up to the courtroom and back down, which is not as big of an issue in this county as it can be in other counties. And basically, it just reduces the amount of contact that people have to have in order to get the core functions of the courtroom taken care of. Now, I want to thank Heather and her office for kind of taking the lead on putting this proposal together. I had the pleasure of sitting in I guess what you call the pitch meeting about a month ago when Mission Electronics came down and kind of presented this proposal to us. It is comprehensive. The equipment and the proposal that they are making is a setup that I have seen utilized in other courthouses in the state of Missouri. I'm aware of some of the other counties that Mission Electric has worked with, Mission Electronics have worked with, and I've been in those courthouses. And I can tell you it's a wonderful system. It is beneficial not only to the court and to the people that generally work in the court, it's beneficial to the litigants who have the ability to attend a proceeding if there's an emergency that comes up or if they need to appear remotely that they can. It's a great benefit to the attorneys because it allows them to utilize that system if they have witnesses that may live in another state or if they have clients who are incarcerated in a prison that's 3 hours away. It gives them the ability to use that system to communicate with them and not require either that prisoner to be brought here or for them to have to travel all that direction. At the end of the day, this is a project that has been ongoing around the state. Certainly those counties that have been able to afford it have already moved in this direction. We haven't had the luxury of being able to do that up to this point, certainly because, as you will see once the proposal is presented, there's a little bit of money involved with it. But at the same time, with COVID and with all the developments that have occurred, it's kind of giving us an opportunity. It's giving us an opportunity to access this money that we wouldn't ordinarily have the ability to access. Out of every disaster comes some invention and necessity. And it's my hope that even after we're past all of this, good Lord willing, in a few months or a year or however long it is, that once we're past all of this, that we're going to learn some lessons from what we've dealt with over the past year that I think are going to be helpful both to the citizens of Camden County and those people who work in the court system. This proposal is just a small part of that. And I do think that the proposal that Heather's office has kind of spearheaded and will present to you today is a proposal that would be of great benefit not only to the court system and the litigants, but to anybody who has business in the court, to anybody who works in the jails or law enforcement. It's going to give us a real opportunity to improve the way justice flows through our courthouse.
And this has been, Matt, this is under state contract, right? So we don't have to deal with the bid process.
That's correct.
That's
Okay.
correct. That's my understanding.
Are you looking to do it for the entire circuit or just for Camden County?
He said it's just for Camden.
And I will tell you that other counties in our circuit some have already proceeded. Morgan County has already installed a Polycom system. They did not use Mission Electronics, but they used another vendor. But they had already installed their system before COVID hit. Miller County was in the process of installing a system similar to this in their courthouse. They have not finished the process yet, but they had begun that process before COVID hit. I do not recall, I'm confident Montauk County has not put any plans in place as of yet for a system like this. Laclede County is discussing it. I think we're continuing to kind of limp along in Laclede County with some other shorter technological issues. Basically, 2 laptops and tying a string between them, I think is kind of what they're working on right now. But long term, that's probably not a super effective solution down there. But those discussions continue to go on down there. But yes, this proposal is just for Camden.
So this will save money going forward after the virus.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
So this system would save money
Absolutely.
going forward?
And
Yes. From our end of it, so prisoner transport comes at a high cost and a high risk as well. So besides the care, custody, control aspects of keeping prisoners in the jail, which also benefits us from a social distancing aspect, I firmly believe that eventually the COVID will get into our jail. It's going to happen, but I don't believe that it's going to come in through an inmate. I think these jails, I'd like to stay optimistic with other facilities are doing what they can as far as the screening process, as are we. I do believe that it's going to get in there through staff or otherwise. The courts, for me, is a concern because as we bring these prisoners back and forth, there is an exposure there that we just can't prevent. So the more that we can keep our folks contained within the walls of our jail, the better we are. Plus, there is a cost savings because we're simply not transporting people back and forth. Polycom will allow us that communication connectivity that we just simply don't have right now.
And it will save a lot after, that's all.
And I believe Polycom's also encrypted in such a way that it's much more secure than the websites like Zoom that are available.
Oh, yeah, we know that those are at risk.
The sheriff, the county commission raised our budget, was it 50? No, 100% of it was 2 years ago. Prisoner costs have gone up.
Yes.
I think it was 100% we raised it. It's getting expensive.
So this is just operationally, it's more efficient? In terms of
It
manpower?
is, operationally, yes, it is, but from that care aspect and the custody aspect of just keeping prisoners as isolated as we can within our confines, I think that's the initial benefit for us until, like Judge Hammer said, until this passes, it's really a gamble as to what is going to happen, but I do believe that it's eventually going to get into our jail and then we
The jail is such a closed venue, once it gets in the jail, it'll probably spread everywhere.
Yeah.
Because they can't go anywhere.
Basically, it makes a lot of sense physically as well, because we're not transporting people, so you don't have wear and tear, you don't have all the other equipment and resources that we're utilizing all the time, so
That's what I was thinking.
lessens our burden.
once we get back to a more normal footing, when we have large arraignment day dockets, it was not uncommon that our jail population would range by 10 to 15 people that would come in from the Department of Corrections. We've seen an upset in that because there's, depending on the institution, quarantines in place and a refusal to transport in some places. And so we're not seeing as many people, but every time we transport people, not only are we sending personnel from the Sheriff's Department to go pick them up and bring them back, but we are housing them, feeding them. They have medical issues, we're dealing with those. And if they come back for one proceeding, quite often, they have multiple proceedings. And so it's more economic then for us to keep them for a week, a month, before we bring them back. And so those costs would be completely eliminated because they would stay where they are and we can dial them up on DOC. It also helps from the prosecutor's standpoint, we have what are called 180-day detainers. So if you are in the Department of Corrections, you will have the right to have all cases against you disposed of within 180 days. So if they file a writ to ask for that to be done, then it puts a time constraint on us, which means that we are transporting people down here and pushing to the end, either a plea or a jury trial within a specific amount of time. Otherwise, those cases are subject to dismissal with prejudice. We've seen the Supreme Court has not had the chance or has declined so far to rule that COVID-19 necessarily is for good cause for anything to be moved. And so we're starting to see the push on that. Are we looking at bench trials to resolve those cases? What are we going to do? But we're starting to see, as the pandemic drags on, that defendants are no longer content to wait. And so I predict that we'll have a new wave of complications as far as how we're going to handle those things. And a system like this does help. And then I believe that part of this proposal as well dealt with the medical aspect within the jail.
Right.
Yes.
Right, so ACH, which is obviously our medical provider, so there is aspects of this proposal that would bring in equipment that we could also use that's attached to this proposal that would benefit our in-house population, which again goes to the more we can contain them, which is kind of where we live and die, if you will, the better off we can keep our folks in-house from having them to leave and go anywhere for any kind of exposure.
Especially to a medical facility right now.
Yeah.
It's more of a, it's kind of like a virtual med cart. They can take blood pressures, temperatures, you can hook up, I think there's like 15 or 20 gadgets that the doctor can do an assessment via video and get all the information in real time as if he was in the same room. So.
Because I mean, some of these issues that we have are, they're not, okay, so I think Judge Richardson next door, she wants everybody in masks pursuant to the state or whoever decision that is, that's fine. For us, no big deal. We put on a mask, we go into the courthouse. Combative inmates sometimes don't want to wear masks. So, you know, the problems are silly, but they multiply very quickly over there. But if we can take that out of the equation and keep them in-house from having them to go next door, I mean, it's a win-win for everybody. I haven't seen anything negative. Judge Hammer alluded to it. My old counterpart in Morgan County that ran their jail had amazing success. And he's been recommending it for us for years, but obviously, as both of these folks have stated, it comes at a cost. So it's, from the sheriff's department standpoint, there's no way we could ever do it, so we never did entertain it. This is as good as it gets, in my opinion. I mean, this is the whole point of this CARES
Okay.
thing.
And Morgan County had the benefit, the way they got the money, they didn't pass a law or raise a tax or anything. They had the benefit of, they house a lot of federal inmates as part of immigration laws and things like that. That can be pretty lucrative. So Morgan County had some money available to do that, and that's where their money came from to fund their system there. And just to kind of piggyback off, and then I'll shut up, you know, the dollars and cents benefit of the system, certainly we can talk about and argue about. One of the things I like the most about it is the safety improvements. Because as these guys will tell you, every time you move an inmate out of jail, whether that to be to bring them up to a courtroom, whether that to be to put them in a car and take them someplace else, there's a risk. Every time you move an inmate and you put an officer within a foot or two of an inmate, moving them somewhere, it's a risk. Now, they have procedures in place and equipment and techniques that they use to ensure that they're doing it in the safest way possible. But there's no way to eliminate that risk entirely. The more we can keep inmates in jails, in prisons, and not have to move them around and handle these court proceedings, the safer it is for everybody.
Do you mind if I ask you a question?
Okay.
I'm Gail Griswold, by the way. Hi. I just was wondering, is the defendant allowed to wait until an in-person? Does that mess with the dismissal for the writ you were discussing? Do they have to do the virtual? Is there going to be a case where they don't are opting for that?
So for 180-day detainment, the things that can be accomplished right now virtually are the arraignment, which is where they're informed of what the charges are against them, any review proceedings. They'd also be able to contact and meet with their attorney virtually. And so the only thing that we would not be able to do virtually would be the actual jury trial. We have done pleas over Polycom and DOC for years, and so that's something that would allow that to happen that way. But the defendant always has the right to trial and to confront their accuser. Some jurisdictions are experimenting with that over Zoom at this point. We're obviously not there. But the problem that we run into with these detainers at this point is that we're waiting 50, 60 days into these to try and, wrangle the person from Department of Corrections because we have rolling quarantines or they're moved between facilities and they're in new quarantine. And we're at the mercy of Department of Corrections before we're allowed to take anybody out. And so 180 days may sound like a long time, but if you're dealing with a felony case and having to move it from associate to circuit, make sure they're represented, go through plea negotiations, and then finally set for trial and find a trial date in a courtroom that's available, it's an incredibly short period of time. So losing a third of that to quarantine procedures within the Department of Corrections for a simple personal appearance is devastating.
Since this COVID pandemic started, the Supreme Court has issued temporary orders to cover kind of what's been going on and has allowed and made changes. One of the things that they have done is they have allowed the suspension of rules that require the attendance of defendants in court. And I don't believe that that applies to actual trials. But, it used to be that you were required to appear in court for your arraignment. It used to be that you were required to appear for these various functions. The Supreme Court has told us during the pandemic, you're not required to do that. Now, I fully expect at some point in the future that will, once all this is passed, we'll go back and defendants will have to appear in court for arraignment. They will have to do various things. But even when we go back to that point, there's still a lot of things that can be done virtually that will save a lot of time and a lot of trouble.
And risk.
And risk.
Thank you.
Can we ask a question? Or,
Absolutely.
I used to install Polycom systems in university settings 20 years ago. So obviously that company's been around a long time. What's preventing or what's stopping like a Zoom meeting now? Is it the risk?
We do Zoom meetings
Okay.
right now. The reason that we are looking at a more comprehensive system, so right now we have a laptop with a stable internet connection in the jail library, and that's how we do our jail dockets. We do mass call dockets and meet through Zoom or WebEx. The problem is that it's extraordinarily limited. So number one, both Zoom and much less so WebEx are liable to be hacked or compromised, so we have that. Trying to deal with a large-scale docket where you're like, all right, everybody be quiet, I'm going to unmute everybody, and if your name is this, then say something. It creates a lot of havoc and is incredibly inefficient.
You don't think the Polycom will do the same?
No, I don't. It
Well,
allows.
And here's probably why, and Sean's a TV guy, so
Yeah, I've hacked the Polycom system.
if you come to one of our dockets, and we have no televisions in the courtroom, there are no cameras, there are security cameras, but no cameras for any video conferencing or anything. When I run a virtual docket in my courtroom on WebEx or Zoom, I have it on my iPad in front of me on the bench. No one else in the courtroom can see it. And the only way I can get people in the courtroom to hear what's on my iPad is to put a microphone next to it.
Yeah.
The only way that people on the iPad can hear anybody in the courtroom is if I bring a speaker over and put it next to the iPad.
I get that. That's
And then we get a bunch of feedback from it. And the system, the proposal at least of the system is it's a much more functional to allow everybody to participate, everybody to be able to appear, and it's more efficient. The reason that Polycom has become, I don't know why Polycom became the standard. I don't. And I'll tell you, quite honestly, I'm not a huge fan of Polycom. I never have been. I've used Polycom for years as a juvenile judge, and it's a pain in the butt. But for whatever reason, the Department of Corrections uses only Polycom. You have no other option. If you want to be able to communicate with the Department of Corrections and reach inmates in prison, you have to have a Polycom system.
It's an example of the free market not working. That's why I didn't know why the Zoom or things like that have been pushed through a free market type setting, been tested, wouldn't reach. I mean, obviously, you're going to save money. I mean, I am totally for what you guys are proposing.
And I'll tell you, this system, we asked these questions specifically at the presentation, this system can utilize Zoom. It can utilize WebEx. It can utilize all those programs. But it's all run through a Polycom camera and a Polycom system. They can utilize Zoom and WebEx, but we just have to have the Polycom system to be able to talk to the DOC.
And part of that as well is within the jail. So right now, like I said, we have one station for Zoom, and that's sufficient. And it has been, except for one or two times. But especially as we tend to get back more towards normal, or frankly, when the backup just gets too bad, it's not uncommon for us to run 4 courtrooms at a time. And when we asked, is it possible to put more laptops down there? The answer is no. It's a security concern. It's a problem with protecting the equipment. It's a acoustics concern. And so part of the equipment that they have here are self-contained boxes that are directly hardwired to the court. The good thing about the boxes, one, they're secured. Two, they can be utilized as well for visitation between defendants and their attorneys when they're not in court. So it helps right now. I know we have a potential backup. I've heard from the defense bar, it's harder for them to access their clients because they have concerns about contraction and things of that nature. So it would further facilitate that. A lot of this is, well, like Judge Hander said, it's not about the Polycom software. And I'd echo Judge Hamner's sentiments. Polycom software is not perhaps the best, and we've been using successfully Zoom even more than WebEx. But this equipment is secure. It will support any new platform that comes through to conference, and can use those and conference them in together, which is really nice. But the equipment itself works together throughout all this, will allow us to communicate with DOC, will allow us to communicate with other jails throughout the system, throughout the state, and allows us not only on this, but then using it as a courtroom in a live setting. Apart from just communication, when we're talking about trials and hearings, it also enables the sharing of documents for the judge to preview those, for them to be annotated to the jury, things that are normal for a first-class county courtroom. Right now, when I travel with a nice projector and my own equipment, because a lot of our courtrooms are not as nice as the jury courtrooms we have here, and they don't have those capabilities, but that's what juries expect, and that's what, frankly, most attorneys expect when they're going in. The days of cardboard posters or chalkboards or flip charts are gone in modern day litigation.
Yeah, but I mean, the Polycom system is basically a unit with a camera and a microphone, and you can get 100 microphones put in a room. You could get the where you can mute the buttons, hit the power, right? I mean, that's the system you're talking about. That's why I'm just, because I mean, for $79 you could buy a tablet and load the software. Somebody else, $79, so $140. You have a system that communicates to each other. So I didn't know what, but you guys are going to save money, obviously, by transportation cost. I mean, we should have been here 20 years ago, right? I mean.
Yeah, and it's, it is, and you're more than welcome to take a look at the proposals. It's more complex than a laptop and a stable internet. This is talking about micing the entire courtrooms and, like I said, the hardware in the jail. But yeah, this could all be assembled individually, but then it doesn't solve our problem with DOC.
And I'll just throw in at the end of that, some of the security is important, and it's not just because we don't want people seeing what's going on in court, but it's because some of the proceedings that we conduct are closed. Some of the proceedings that we may need to conduct via WebEx are not to be open to the public. Certain juvenile proceedings, adoption proceedings, things like that could potentially utilize. I think that's why OSCA, which is the Office of State Courts Administrator in the Supreme Court, always has an eye towards security when they're installing these systems. You ask why aren't we using Zoom more? It's just because they haven't vetted. You know how the government is. I'm still using Lotus Notes email. Our state uses Lotus Notes email still for all of my email. That Lotus Notes was state of the art 20 years ago, but they still use it because they vetted it, they're comfortable with it, and that's what, and that's just the government.
I think Jimmy is really great.
So I have some few questions. Is it going to modify or cover all 4 courtrooms?
Yes.
Will you be able to handle more than 4 prisoners at a time for each courtroom down at the jail? So if you had someone for each courtroom that was separate, could you handle that also?
Well, they don't usually do criminal in all 4 courts at the same time. If they're using all 4 courts, at least one of them is civil. So
It
there
would
won't
be
an
unusual to
individual.
have 4 courtrooms going with criminal cases at a time.
So,
But there would be capability to do all 4 courtrooms.
and then, they said they provide a grant writer, and how much is it going to cost?
Around, with installation, around $700,000. And that's them, they'll come down, they'll spend a week here, everything will be installed. There is no continuing costs after that. That also includes
700.
Yeah.
I knew we were doing a lot of talking, so I knew this was waiting.
So that
The dollar
$140
amount had to be high.
I wasn't aware you didn't have the number. That's my fault. I would have told you earlier.
Heather said that.
That's where my laptop prices came in.
What about later? Once you pay, you're done.
You're done. So
I've had to
there
make things.
is, in this, there is a year of service, okay? There is no like subscription cost to this, which is what we asked. You can subscribe to a plan where they will come out, you can make it a year, you can make it 3 years, and they'll make sure that any updates on the system are installed and you're within that. You can choose to subscribe to that or to not. And that was a big question we had because we didn't want to get stuck with something where if we decided not to pay the exorbitant every year cost that wasn't in our budget, that we would have a bunch of useless electronics, and that's not the case here.
So one more question on the electronic side, do we have to modify the internet, do we need a wider?
We did. Part of that, I believe, is within the cost. So I think the internet itself, we had to modify into the jail. And I'm not sure what we were looking at within the courthouse, but this includes servers as well.
I think it proposes a dedicated line of internet usage that will be used exclusively for the video conferencing, which anybody that's been on a Zoom or a WebEx meeting knows those things take up a lot of bandwidth. And if you don't have pretty good internet, they don't.
One of the questions I have is obviously we are under a time constraint with this money.
That's the next thing.
That's the next thing.
I know, Jimmy, I knew that was probably running through your mind.
Yeah, well, I'm just hadn't got there yet.
So, what's their time frame for installation and how can we work around, because the checks have got to be written by the end of the year.
And we've been assured it's not a problem. So we can get the grant, as soon as we get your okay, we can get the grant started to be written. I would anticipate the grant done within 30 to 45 days as soon as we get the okay. They said about 90 days for installation. So, but I would believe that before installation, we would have to be writing the check. The grant would have to be written.
Tell me something, do you guys feel that this is about 13% of the entire CARES grant? That's how much it would eat up. Do you guys feel that it's worth that?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I do.
Okay.
Because you're talking about a service that, what percentage of people in Camden County have to use our court system at any one time? Or it potentially affects everybody.
So the fact that it will make us more efficient moving forward, that counts a lot. I mean, we'll be able to use it after the virus eventually is going to pass. And hopefully it'll have a long lifespan on it that'll be of value to us 6 years from now.
Keep in mind, we were going to just do this as potentially just a general discussion. What are we going to do, how are we going to do it out of a regular session of commission. But we are in session with the commission. So, and we had no idea, what you guys were bringing. So I don't know whether we want to just sit back and maybe notice up, give us what you got, and we can notice up another meeting to get it underway. I would prefer to do that rather than making a decision.
I agree. It's drilled down on it.
And we have pretty much said we want every CARES expenditure to be on this, in a meeting specific for
Right.
a CARES expenditure.
Yeah, I want this on an actual docket where we can, because you know as well as I do, I have to sign off on this stuff. Okay, so, I guess you guys have got the proposal for us then to look over.
We do.
And we will take a look at that, and we will set a commission meeting at the earliest possible date, so we can get this underway.
That would be wonderful. Would you prefer printed copies, or would you like them emailed to you?
Actually, I would prefer to get a printed copy and email, so that way there would be a record of it if there was anything that ever, came down the road.
I agree.
Yeah, me too.
Absolutely.
Okay?
All right, thank you.
Is there any other information that we can?
No, you guys really did a great job.
Okay.
Wonderful presentation.
And if you would like, I'm sure that the same gentleman that came down and kind of sat in the courtroom with us and went through, I could make him available. I would bet.
Whenever we look at the CARES agenda, I'll look like you, or someone else.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Was there any other companies that you had looked at, or is Polycom what the government has used?
Polycom is the only company that talks with Department of Corrections. You can't use any other company. And this company is the only licensed Polycom provider for the area.
And there's another issue with regard to this, and the time frame that you need to be aware of. We've got to the end of the year on this money. This stuff, that's why I asked Heather to confirm, this was under a state contract, and what that means is the state has already went through the bid process, so these are an approved bid. If Camden County tried to go out for bids right now and then look at all the various proposals, we wouldn't make the time frame and we'd be out. So, that's of prime importance. Okay. Anybody else? I would entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting. Those in favor? We are adjourned.